Welcome to the Sociable Dog Pod, the podcast for anyone who wants to know more about the extraordinary relationship we have with our dogs and why we don't always understand each other. We'll be digging into the roots of dog behaviour so we can get to know our best friends better and make our lives with them a little richer. We'll be busting some of those sticky myths about why they do what they do, exploring how they learn, and trying to interpret their language. We'll talk science, we'll share stories, have some laughs, and make some interesting discoveries all along the way. I'm Si Wooler, and I've been working with dogs and their humans for more than 15 years. So let's talk dogs. This week, as it's the last pod of Series 1, we're going to do something a little bit different. No training advice, just a little celebration of the magic of dogs.
And to kick this one off, you're going to indulge me in having a bit of a rant about one of my pet peeves.
Sure.
You come across them on TikTok, you'll see them in the press. It's those angst-ridden listicles. You recognise what I mean when I say it's things like, I'm a vet and these are the 5 breeds of dogs I'd never own, or I'm a professional dog trainer and these are 5 dogs I hate training, or I'm a vet and these are 3 games you should never play with your dog. I've even come across inexplicably, in fact, I can't help feeling it was a spoof, I'm a vet nurse and these are the 5 dog names we hate. I mean, really? There's even been one this summer, and this one, as everyone can imagine, touched a particular nerve. I'm a vet, and these are the 10 reasons why you should never hit those cap locks. People, never take your dog to the beach. Now, in fairness, some of these contain nuggets of valuable info and sensible watch-outs, including the one about beaches. But some are just a massive pointless prejudice masquerading as expert opinion. Whatever they are, they all seem just designed to raise the blood pressure and frankly suck the joy out of spending time with our dogs.
Do you think it's partly something about social media?
Yeah, it's clickbait. It is clickbait. But, you know, let's reclaim the joy of dogs.
Yeah, because, I mean, the beach one in particular, it kind of comes from a place, I think, where they're talking about the need for the dog to focus on you and not on something else. So playing a game that they're really, really fond of is bad because it doesn't have the focus on you. Whereas, really, do we actually need our dogs to be focusing on us constantly? Particularly if it's depriving them of something they really enjoy.
I mean, sensible precautions around sand and toys and digging and all of that sort of thing. But, I mean, we see dogs every day having just a whale of a time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that dog yesterday that was just bounding around like a deer because his people were playing a tennis game and he was getting to chase the ball. And actually their objective wasn't to hit the ball to each other. It was exactly for the dog to enjoy themselves. And I get the concerns when it comes to stuff like chuck-its and all of that the dog's leaping for balls and there's a worry that they might do themselves harm. But I think we've got to keep it all in perspective, don't you? And recognise that there's an element of risk, but the level of joy involved is just, it's a welfare treasure trove.
Absolutely.
So anyway, this week, we offer you the antidote to these misery-laden lists. This is the joyful edition of the podcast. We're going to give you 6 reasons to be humble, grateful, and cheerful about having a dog. You can most certainly add to them, in fact, please do, but these are ours in no particular order or importance. Number 1, they're always so happy to see you. You can be gone for a week or gone for an hour, you'll get a welcome. Now, I particularly like the fact that some dogs will bring you a toy to celebrate your return. Ripley always does. If she can't find a toy, she'll bring a shoe or whatever she can lay her mouth on. Do you want me to explain that? Yeah, I thought you might. I've been thinking about this, and I think it's easy when it comes to articles of clothing that are yours. I think socks and shoes, plimsolls, all of that sort of thing. I can get the fact that your smell is on them and they're grabbing something out of delight to bring you. And I think that probably is it, full stop, is just the need to have something to hold and to come and proffer you. I can only speculate, really, because I don't know how you would evidence what that's about, because unfortunately we can't ask little Ripley dog why she picks Heel and Coo or
Kevin the Christmas dog.
Kevin the Christmas dog to come and say hello to you. But she often goes and makes a particular choice. You can see her going through the different toys and the different objects, deciding which one's going to come to you. And of course, sometimes it's a ballie. But the last thing she actually wants you to do with that is throw it on that occasion, which is rare. Little sweetheart.
There's also just the sheer unbridled enthusiasm for doing the things that they love again and again. I mean, Ripley gets to go on the beach every day, and her excitement is exactly the same every single time. Murphy, our Rottweiler, used to do an Irish jig when he was served his dinner.
He did. He used to stand on his back legs and jig, didn't he?
Yeah.
He was so sweet. And I think that they live in the moment is a very true. But I also think it's interesting in that there is clearly a memory. So there's anticipation involved in stuff like Ripley going to the beach. And yet it seems to increase in excitement, increase in prospect every single morning. So it's absolutely adorable. I mean, Murphy did try, even as he got older, he used to try and get up on his legs and do his Irish jig. But he was certainly happy when anybody mentioned dinner. In fact, usually if it was a millisecond late, he would be letting you know, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Okay, so that was number one. Number two, they don't judge you. Dogs don't care about your fashion sense, your haircut, your music tastes, or even your lack of appreciation of Valpolicella.
Oh, funny.
Once they know you've treated them right, they will always think you're great, just the way that you are. There is an exception, not scientifically proven, of course, but certainly anecdotal evidence that if you're a lousy ball thrower, they may judge you for that and hand over the responsibility to a more competent launcher.
Which I think is harsh. I think you're referring to yourself and the tendency for Ripley to grab the ball back before you've had opportunity to pick it up. And then she'll quite happily let me pick it up, despite the fact that I can quite frequently end up throwing it in completely the wrong direction and it landing in the sea. And yet there is still this funny... It's hard to imagine it's anything other than a joke, really, that she just finds it funny to let you get almost there and then pounce on that ball and remove it and take it away again. I mean, I am in danger of being made homeless if she doesn't change her ways. Yeah, they don't generally bear grudges or do things to annoy you or spite you. They just do what works for them. And I think that's a really important point to make, is that they don't share our inclination to feel things like resentment and jealousy and even guilt. There's another one that their behaviour is often interpreted as, but it's actually really just anticipation or expectation of something that they've learned is coming next. So I think that's the point, is that they do really live in the moment for whatever they can make the most of. And I think that includes our company, because they are social animals. I know I bang on about this all the time. I'm always saying they're social animals. They do love you. And it's almost as if I'm saying it as a but I'm not, because it's really important. Their close social group matters to them enormously.
Yeah. So, number three, along the same line, dogs are fascinated, it would appear, by what you have to say, even when you're talking absolutely inconsequential nonsense. In fact, sometimes precisely because you are talking inconsequential nonsense. It's the tone of voice that does it, isn't it? They do that intense concentration and then that little head tilt. What's that all about?
I love that head tilt. There's a cartoon that does the rounds every now and again. I'm sure you've seen it, which is a cartoon of little puppies at school, and they're all doing the little head tilt. And the teacher dog is up at the blackboard and he's saying something to the effect of, judging by the head tilts, we need to go over that one again. It's just priceless. Yes, I think what it most probably is, and it's one of those probablys, but I think it's reasonable to suppose that what they're actually looking for is something they recognise.
Yeah.
or the sound is curious to them and they may never have heard it before. So if you make a silly sound, many dogs, they'll do the head tilt. And I think possibly it's just looking for something that they recognize in what you say and an expectation that something is going to happen for them, I think, I suspect. But it is adorable. It's absolutely adorable. What do you think? You've gone all open mouthed on me. Like, you've asked me what I think.
I was hoping you were going to give an expert opinion there.
Oh, an expert opinion on head tilts?
Yeah.
No, that was my expert opinion. That was as far as it goes, is the expectation or anticipation of something that they might recognise, or alternatively, something that they definitely don't.
Yeah. But they also do it when they do recognise something, like if you say, do you want a treat? They'll go,
yes, they will, almost as if they want you to say it again just to confirm that they've heard it correctly. Murphy didn't do that. He just went, Rose, no. But ultimately, I think the point is that they pay attention. You know, they're tilting their heads. They haven't got them in phones and they haven't got their minds elsewhere. They're constantly watching and reading you. I think the exception, of course, is sniffing, which is kind of like fubbing or phone snubbing. They can go a bit deaf then, can't they, when they've got a really interesting sniff in the hedgerow or up against a telegraph pole. Goodness knows what that is. But it's important to keep abreast of the news from the local doggy community, so you can't fault them too much for that, can you?
no, I don't.
Well, nor do I. Indeed, most of the sniffing that I see from Ripley Dog, I stand there patiently as the good chauffeur that I am.
Yeah, and rightly so.
Okay, number 4. They open up the world to you if you let them. When they do stop to hang around and sniff, they're giving you a chance to catch your breath, notice the world around you. They get you out in all weathers. And that's true, isn't it? I mean, I don't think Ripley's all that keen on the bracing northeasterly storms that occur sometimes where we are. But nonetheless, I find it inspiring that when she's just dawdling about, I'm looking out to sea or I'm noticing something about a particular bird that's landed on a tree next to us, or any number of things that you might not have noticed if you weren't out in the world with your doglet.
Yeah, I mean, some of the best walks I've ever had have been in really, really unpromising weather. I remember this was years ago and it still stays with me, that it was with my Cocker Spaniel and it was a really miserable rainy day in November. I'd had an absolutely grim week, but I thought, I've got to take him out for a walk, I suppose. And because it was raining really heavily, I thought, we'll go to the woods. There'll be a bit of shelter. By the time we got to the woods, the rain had turned to snow. And because it was early November, the trees were all still in autumn colour. They were just like blazing reds and oranges, gradually, quietly being covered in white. And it was the most magical thing. And if I hadn't had a dog to take out for a walk, I would have just sat at home feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah, watching Ski Sunday or something. Yes.
Oh, me. Number 5.
Number 5 is you.
Yeah.
We agreed. You said you'd do number 5. You promised.
And I will. Number 5. They introduce you to people you wouldn't otherwise necessarily talk to. Dogs do not recognise political or social divides. Good for them. They're an absolute antidote to the echo chambers we put ourselves in, particularly in social media these days.
Yes, I think that's true. I mean, you can't help but even just say hello to somebody who's walking with another dog next to you or past you. And very often you end up in conversation, don't you? Particularly if you're waiting to cross a road or something of that ilk, because they're the beginning of the conversation. Somebody wants to know. It's like asking about the weather. It's the dog parents' version of commenting on the weather, isn't it? It's how old is he? What's his name?
Yeah. But then you start to chat a little bit more and you get perspectives from people that you might otherwise never have occasion to stop and meet.
Yes. And they've usually got stories
to
tell, often about their dogs, but sometimes it moves on. And so you can end up with actual really good friendships out of it too. You meet people that you wouldn't have otherwise met and that turn out to be really valuable in your life.
Yeah.
And to some extent, we had a slightly different situation given that we run a dog training business, because when we were in Wiltshire, we started doing puppy classes with Ripley because we couldn't find a class to take Ripley to. So we did our own. And we met some really super people.
We did, yeah.
And I know that's cheating. We kind of... It was a ready-made 6 people accidental meeting that wasn't accidental. But nonetheless, we met some really super people that we wouldn't have met because we didn't necessarily go to the same places. We weren't necessarily going out on the same dog walks at the same time of day, but we soon got to the point where we were doing extracurricular walking training sessions because everybody got on so well.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Of course, if you have a reactive dog, we should say something about that, which can be a real source of sadness. But don't despair would be my message. Keep working, keep training. And if you can get your local dog walking community to help you and support, then that's fantastic, because I do think that's sometimes worth doing. If you've got, I remember with Thompson, my first Rottweiler, who was the guy that got me into dog training and dog behavior. He had serious issues. He had issues around people. He was very fearful of them. He was fearful of other dogs. He was fearful sometimes of just black plastic bags blowing across the road. And he would exhibit this fear in aggressive behavior. And he was a big fella. He was about 50 kilos. So he was a big lad. And he was quite unnerving to people. Very gradually, I met people who were willing to come out on walks and keep distance, or just do timed walk pasts, that we'll meet at this place at this time and I'll just walk in past you at a distance and thank you very much. And that turned into walking groups who Thompson was perfectly comfortable walking with, not only the people, but the dogs too. Mm. So it is worth doing that. It's really worth asking around. And if you've got a challenging dog, of course, you can put muzzles in place. You can probably train a dog to like wearing a muzzle so that you've got that protection if there's any doubt. In that regard, the first bit of advice I would give would be to get a trainer, to get a professional involved in helping you with your reactive dog. But it doesn't mean that you can't elicit the assistance of people in your community as well, because boy, does it help with their general view of you and your dog.
Yeah, and your feeling of being isolated when you thought getting a dog was going to be, a fun friend-making experience, but can be very isolating.
Yeah, absolutely. Which brings us to number 6. They play. Dogs carry on being playful well into old age, or at least they can do. I think they become a bit more selective about their canine playmates, but they do still play. They can certainly be persuaded into play with you, and I think that's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful way of maintaining a bond between you, and it's a superb way of building a bond if what you've got is a shelter dog or a rescue dog that you're finding it really difficult to connect with. And play should be your starting point. And that can be really, really, really gentle, because the chances are that if you've got that issue, your dog isn't going to come romping into a big full-on play around a tennis ball or a tug toy, but you can gradually work towards that. And I'm a big believer in using that to build bonds. And boy, it's got to be helpful for your mental health, not just yours, but your dog's too.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are occasionally, particularly rescue dogs, who may find toys puzzling at first. So it is about gentle introductions. But I mean, play's valuable for the dogs, but also we are so serious as a species, humans, and play is really important for us as well. We don't get much opportunity outside sort of organised sports or drama or whatever to just let our hair down and play. And it's really good for us.
Yeah, I think it certainly is. The point is that it's not doing nothing, as it were. You're not wasting time by engaging in play with your dog. You're facilitating something. You're building on something. You're maintaining something. And everything like behaviour, relationships between dogs and people need maintaining. And play is the perfect way of doing that. And sometimes you have to start that with very fearful dogs. That's about just sitting relatively close to them and gently rolling a ball backwards and forwards under your hand. Might be the only thing that you do for weeks, potentially. But at some point, the dog's going to start watching the ball, and then you know you're in the money.
Yeah. And all those little signals they give off to say they want a game, dogs that are big players. Because, I mean, even Sophie from Romania, who's a very shy dog, she has her own little play signal, doesn't she?
Yes, she does. She's got an absolutely adorable play signal. She does this little roll of her head. She often raises her paw at the same time. So she does have a very sweet play signal. And she's become much, much, much more playful as time goes on. So this is the last Sociable Dog Pod of Series 1. I can't believe we've done 10 already. Can you? We'll be back in a month when we're hoping to look at some of the topics you've been requesting, like separation anxiety and techniques for dealing with common behaviour issues. So thanks for listening and have a joyful time with your dogs. Say goodbye, Nina.
Goodbye, Nina.
Thanks very much.